Hello, good morning and welcome to Core Finance, brought to you by Blythe Way. I'm Charlie Gibson. Now, as you'll know, consistent with our policy of trying to bring you companies whose share price either could or would or has gone up by several times its share price, a multi-bagger, so to speak, in the parlance. We are bringing you a company which, well, perhaps its shares aren't up 100% over a year, but if you look at just the last 3 weeks, the shares have gone up from 1.275 to 1.825. Now, I don't expect you to do the maths on that. I didn't even do the maths myself. But over the course of 3 weeks, that is an increase of 43%. Pretty impressive, you might say to yourself, and indeed I'd have to agree with you. Well, the company in question is Botswana Diamonds, and to explain what they've been doing in order to get that share price return, how they've done it and what they're going to do in the future, I'm joined by the Managing Director, James Campbell. James, very good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. So, what have you been doing for the last 3 weeks to get that share price reaction?
Well, good morning, Charlie. Thank you so much for the introduction. We've basically been steadily ploughing away on our major project called Vitomi in South Africa. When we last spoke at the beginning of the year, we outlined a work program which would start to delineate and sample the kimberlites we had rediscovered in that area. And over the last 2 weeks has been the culmination of reporting those results, which include recovering of 223 microdiamonds from 160 kilograms of drill core, which gives a modelled grade of just under 80 carats per 100 tonnes. It also includes the granting of a prospecting permit on the farm Doornrivier, and that, along with Frischgewaagt and ADVFN, we're calling the Zebedela project, which basically encompasses the whole kimberlite field in that area. And then thirdly, we don't just have the Zebedela project in Vitomi, we have a number of other diamondiferous kimberlites, about 20 in South Africa under the Vitomi banner, and we've rediscovered a project called Ontevreden, where we've identified a Group 2 kimberlite with high interest garnets.
Now, I can't help noticing that the company name is Botswana Diamonds, and most of what's going on is in South Africa. Do you still have interest in Botswana, or will you be renaming the company?
No, Charlie, very, very much so. We've got two major interests in Botswana. The first one is a joint venture with Alrosa, and how we operate that is we have two big field seasons. The first runs around April and May, and the second in August and September. And there, with that particular field season, our geologists, along with the Alrosa geologists, hit a large block of ground very, very hard. And then it takes a little while for the results to be reported. So it's 2 or 3 times a year would make reporting. The second is a joint venture with a company called BCL, which is the second largest mining company in Botswana, but sadly they're in liquidation. So we're in a bit of stasis at the moment from a corporate perspective. We have made an offer to the liquidator to buy out BCL's share because we believe the project to be very, very high interest. Comparing that with Vitomi, we operate Vitomi week in, week out, all the time. And we're the operators under Vitomi too. So perhaps that's why you see more news flow coming from Vitomi, whereas the news flow coming from particularly the Alrosa JV will be large 2 or 3 times a year.
Okay, so what gets you up in the morning? What's the bit that you're focused on? Do you get up and do you think, Botswana, it's all about that, and I'll pick up the phone and talk to the Alrosa people, or do you think it's all about Zebedela and Frischgewaagt and pick up the phone to the Northwest Province?
I actually don't think it's either or, I think it's both. And I think with the Alrosa thing, what is really exciting about that is our new discoveries. Now, we are working in the Central Kalahari Game Reserve, where there's the Gem Diamonds Gargu mine and the very exciting KX36 project by Petra. And what wakes me up there is discovering a new kimberlite in the middle of Botswana. And Botswana is a wonderful country to do business, very rich in diamond history. And then on the other hand, in the Zebedela area, I have long had a passion for developing that part of the world and making commercial project at the end of the day. And why is that? Is I spent my early married life there, and we discovered at that time what was the Marsfontein mine, which had a 3.5-day payback, and then the Klipspringer mine, which is currently on care and maintenance and owned by Assa Mining PLC. And I've long been of the view that there's unfinished business, and I would like to complete that business.
Okay. So can I put it this way to you? If I was to offer you, I've got a kimberlite in Botswana, would you like it? Or I have a kimberlite in South Africa, would you like it? Which would be the one that you would go for?
Charlie, that's an incredibly difficult
It's very generous, indeed very generous as well. However,
I'm not being a politician, but I'm going to answer it in a couple of ways. First, if you find a kimberlite in the Central Kalahari Game Reserve, you've got a wonderful fiscal climate, you've got low political risk, but you're probably sitting beneath 60 metres or 40 metres of sand, where water and power and infrastructure is actually far away. So your threshold in terms of your dollar per tonne would have to be quite high to actually do it. Whereas in South Africa, yes, you do have higher political risk, and we all accept that fact, but it's not as high as people actually make it out to be. But you've got great roads, you've got great power, you've got a great banking system, you've got all the things you actually need to build a mine. So typically, on a very general basis, your dollar per tonne threshold would be considerably lower.
Okay. So how are we going to see these two? We've got Botswana on the one hand, we've got South Africa. What can we expect in the future? What are the targets? What are you expecting to hit? What's the news flow that we can expect over the next few months?
Okay, well in Vitomi there are three areas we're going to be focusing on. The first one is to generate an inferred resource. We're a long way down that in terms of looking at the volume, the grade and the diamond value, and we have a further drilling program planned this month and then bulk sampling planned after that. And when we collate all that information with what we have, we should be in a position to declare an inferred resource. And that is a major milestone for an exploration or a development company. Secondly, in Vitomi, we need to do more work on Ontevreden. We've already identified it's a group 2 kimberlite, and we've already identified the high interest garnets. We now need to see how big is it.
And garnets, the reason you mention these, they're an indicator?
Very strong indicator, firstly of kimberlites, and secondly of their diamond-bearing capacity.
And what about, and where actually, we talk about these kimberlites, that they're usually sort of vertical structures, aren't they, which you mine by open pit. Now, is this something that's vertical from surface, and is that the way you would conceive of mining it? Well, I know we're a little bit away from that at the moment, but,
No, absolutely. In the Zebedela area, we're actually looking at kimberlite dikes, which are tabular, thin features, but what we're really looking at are the blows on the intersection of structures. Marsfontein was a very small blow, 0.4 hectares, but extraordinarily rich. And we're looking for these little tiny pipes, which could be very rich. Ontevreden is a pipe. And then we actually would like, to answer your earlier question, to start looking at the 20 or so kimberlites we have in the Free State region of South Africa and start to prioritise them in terms of work and which one may have the potential to actually move forward.
So how are you, so a lot of work to be done here. I mean, which raises the question: how do you prioritise the work, and how are you prioritising your exploration dollar at the moment, and how are you financing it?
Well, for the prioritisation, we're going to be spending probably 3/4 of our money allocated to Vitomi on the Zebedela project, because as you go down the resource pipeline, the expenditure actually increases. Ontevreden is a relatively limited drilling program, and then with the Free State kimberlites, ground geophysics and geochemistry is a relatively cheap mechanism of actually generating the work. And one mustn't forget, by the way, our joint venture with Alrosa. We need to finance that. We're going to be going back in there in the second fill season, and we're probably going to be drilling some very interesting targets and anomalies.
You've gone down the joint venture route in Botswana. Would you do that in South Africa, or is that yours? You're going to keep it to yourself, you're going to finance it and develop it yourself?
Well, at the moment we have an earn-in arrangement with a company called Vitomi, and we will shortly, I'm sure, announce that we're going to phase 2 of that earn-in arrangement. And if we do go to completion, Botswana Diamonds will own 72% of Vitomi. Now, somebody might want to come and joint venture with us, somebody might want to work with us, and if there's a value proposition behind that, of course we'll look at it, yes. We're very strong on partnerships, but each party must bring something unique and something of value to that partnership.
So it'd be remiss of me if I didn't ask you about the operating environment in South Africa, and in particular the mining charter, or the proposed mining charter that we've heard so much about in the press. And tell us a bit about it. What is your take on it, and how's it going to develop? Because it's created quite a lot of column inches of media comments, and it's been quite acrimonious, I think it would be fair to say, with recriminations, counter charges, all sorts of things backwards and forwards, who consulted and who didn't consult what, and lots of people coming out on one side or the other. But you're if you like, you're at the nexus of this, you're in the middle of it. What's it like?
Well, look, I'm obviously speaking for someone who actually lives in South Africa and works in South Africa, who originally identified the Vitomi project as something very, very exciting because of that perceived very high risk from outside, but it is not that way at all. If I look at one of the major portions of the charter itself, and that's 30% local ownership. Votomi is already 28% local ownership, and our parties who are part of the local ownership are fully paid up and full members of the team itself. The current charter stands at 26%. So yes, there are other parts of the charter which make it more onerous, but when you actually look at it in that particular context, and you look at it in the context of working in Africa or South America or any other second or third world country, you'll see, well, it's actually no big deal really at the end of the day. And I think a reflection of that is the charter was withdrawn temporarily between the Minister of Mines and the Chamber of Mines to actually go back to the negotiating table and have a good bargaining session actually on it.
All right, excellent. James, I'm afraid that's all we got time for. Thank you very much indeed. However, we'll look forward to you coming back and tell us all about it and tell us how it's going later on in the year. As I say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid that's all we got time for, but that was James Campbell, the Managing Director of Botswana Diamonds, joining me there. Their shares up 43% in the last 3 weeks. Let's see if they can do another 43% over the next 3 weeks. As I say, that's all from me. Join us again in a week where we'll be looking for more companies which have that sort of share price, both prospects and also past performance as well, and then we'll see what they can bring to the table. In the meanwhile, I'm afraid, as I say, that's all we got time for. That's it from me, Charlie Gibson at Core Finance, and in the meantime, you have a capital day.